Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, Adam Caplan, and we've got a big game for the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday to preview here. They're traveling out to the Heartland to face the Indianapolis Colts out there at Lucas Oil Stadium. It is, a game that maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago we would have thought the train just keeps rolling. The Eagles are flying high. The Colts are just having an abysmal year. Lo and behold, it's in this small amount of time. The Eagles suffer their first loss, a little bit of a surprising loss there to Washington. And of course, Indianapolis with maybe the headline of the year a couple of weeks ago with the firing of Frank Reich, the hiring of Jeff Saturday as the head coach. And then they win their first game. So that adds a lot of intrigue. This game, Adam, will be Jeff Saturday's first home game as Colts coach, as an NFL head coach. And I've been to the Lucas Oil Stadium, as you have. I've been there for Colts games. It's a pretty loud arena. It's not Superdome loud because I don't know if there's any dome I've ever been to that's as loud as where the Saints play. But Lucas Oil Stadium can definitely get very loud. And if for those who haven't seen it, on our last pregame show, Trey Thomas and Jason Avant did an excellent job sort of diagnosing some of the issues the Eagles have had with silent counts for the last few years, and it's on our YouTube platform. I would check it out. They'll certainly have to use the silent count at the stadium on Sunday, you would think, with the crowd noise. Yeah. So shaping up to be a pretty interesting game.
It is. In fact, the Colts, via that win, they're only a game out of the last wildcard spot in the AFC. So, yeah, it is a big game all of a sudden. And the NFC East, like the AFC East now, is a tight division. The Eagles don't have much room for error right now, as the Giants somehow, I don't know how, only have 2 losses. I mean, it's a great story by their coaches, but I mean they're finding ways to win. I know their schedule's eased up a little bit, but they continue to win these close games, find a way to win the fourth quarter. It's pretty remarkable. So, it is. You're right. It's taken on, and in week 11, here we are. It's Friday, and this game's taken a little bit more of an importance. I didn't expect it to, but it does.
Well, I'm glad we have 2 more hours on Sunday to break this game down with Greg Cosell and Jason Avant. And I say that because that'll be, we'll get into the X's and O's for that game. This preview podcast, which we ordinarily do a lot of that too, is sort of going to get interfered with because a lot has happened since we did our film review pod on Wednesday. I mean, players getting hurt, players getting off the IR, players going on IR, players getting signed. So we're going to spend a good deal of this podcast just kind of talking about, I don't want to call it the new look Eagles, but certainly the different looking Eagles with all of the player movement that's happened over the last 24 to 48 hours. So we got a lot to get to on that just even before we start previewing the matchup against the Colts. So I'll keep it short with the promos, but this is important. We've just done our latest bonus exclusive podcast. Our Chalk Talk series continued for our Patreon subscribers. And we're fortunate enough to have a former NFL head coach, Mark Trestman, who coached the Bears for 2 years, come on with us. And by the way, not only did he coach the Bears for 2 years, he was a 3-time champion head coach in CFL, and he had about 20 other years of assistant coach, from quarterbacks coach to offensive coordinator coach. The guy had basically coached in every city imaginable with every coach imaginable. So he was a fountain of knowledge. And the cool thing about the interview, Adam, and I think it's been pretty consistent with our Chalk Talk series, but this one especially, is just how candid, how visceral, how self-deprecating at times, how honest and how pensive Mark Trestman is as a person and was with us. I mean, he really opened up to us about his coaching tenure in Chicago, which wasn't very successful, his failures, his successes elsewhere, play calling. We ran the gamut of questions, which we like to do in this, and we just got a ton of great stories, knowledge, and insight from him.
What happens with these interviews is we have sort of like an outline, and then we just throw it out the door because these guys, they'll take it sometimes in a different direction. It's so cool. So I'll give you one little nugget, which is super interesting. So I met Mark in Cleveland. I saw 7 head coaches on my tour, my training camp tour, and I met him. I was wanting to talk to the guy. I heard a lot about him from coaches who are friendly with him, and he happened to be there the day I was at the Browns practices, and we talked for hours. It was incredible. When we talked, I basically teed him up, would listen, and just hearing about who he worked with. Bud Grant, by the way, Bud Grant, the legendary Vikings coach. His first pro job was with Bud Grant, and Mark was in his late 20s. We talked about that. I totally forgot he coached Steve Young for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about his coaching with Jerry Rice. Wait to hear a story about Jerry Rice. My goodness gracious.
An amazing story.
But the big thing is, and for those of you who are into the leadership part of coaching, and whether you own a business, and sometimes you have to take a look at yourself and say, how could I be better? And he tells a story. I had heard part of this when I met Mark, but this part of he didn't tell all this stuff until he did this show with us this week. To say that I was blown away is an understatement. I know you did. You called me. You were like, you're like blown away by it.
It's funny because we didn't talk about this, but I had the
No.
same exact thought during the interview that you just articulated, which is that while I was listening him talk about his plan for coaching, and by the way, that's another great story, just how he sold himself upon the Chicago Bears was really unique.
Oh, yeah.
But that this would be a good podcast to listen to if you are into, or you read books or listen to podcasts about CEOs or leaders or those who get to the top of their field and how they got there and what it took and what they learned, when they got on the top. And if you had any kind of fall in your life professionally, how you rebound from that and what you learned from that. It was life kind of news more than just football news. So I agree with you on that. You learned a lot there.
Yeah, it's funny. He and I were texting back and forth. I don't think he quite realized we were going to go as long as we did, but that was up to him.
Yeah.
And storytelling, who he coached, and his life story as a coach. He was a quarterback at University of Minnesota. He's from that area, and we were talking to him actually from Toronto when we did that interview. He goes back and forth, but he's actually now an adjunct professor at the University of Miami. He teaches at their law school. He has a leadership podcast. And his story, he talked about Brandon Marshall. I didn't realize how close he was, the receiver. There's a podcast out there. I saw I was doing some research for this interview. Apparently, they became very close over a series of years. And Mark talked about that. It was just there's so much happened in that interview, which I don't know this guy that well, which was
right.
Kind of like, you're like, wow, I didn't know he was going in that direction. And it was just that, Paul Gunther did that. It's a lot of stuff we didn't know.
Yes.
The former Raider D coordinator, and John DeFilippo did from the 2017 season. Told stories he never talked before in any interview. So we encourage you to subscribe and tell them how to everyone could subscribe to our service there.
It's patreon.com/InsideTheBirds. And we do bonus exclusive podcasts like that. We also do Ask ITB live streams once a month. We will be doing that one in a week and a half or so. And we use the Discord platform to interact with our subscribers. And Adam on 8 o'clock Wednesday nights does a half-hour chat just for them to answer questions and talk Eagles football. We're doing some prizes and giveaways. We've already done one. We'll be doing more. And I'm trying to think what else I'm missing. By the way, we answer your questions on our pregame show. I leave a little box for people to leave their questions on Patreon. So, and then we answer them. And if they're good answers, we cut them up and put them back on the platform so that people make sure they see them.
One thing I would add, I did for the first time go on the Discord during the game. It's actually really a lot of fun. I was like, oh boy, what am I getting myself into? But who know? You never know, because they lost, and it was so maddening with the 4 turnovers. But no, people, look, these guys know what they're talking. The great thing about it is when you're listening to our show, it's more of an insider show, so people really want to learn about football. They also know a lot. They're pretty educated fans. It was interesting to see the comments. I'm reading down the Discord for people who don't know about it. It's more of it's a social network, a platform, but it's got all sorts of channels. And our channel is great because there's a fantasy football channel. There's a general channel where I hold my chat, and there's the channel where you watch the games together. And I'm just I'm just chiming in. Like if they ask me a question, great, but we would just all chime in together. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's a really great experience. So, and we're always trying to do more for our Patreon subscribers. So hang with us if you've been one. We're going to keep adding to it. We just got to learn how to do the thing the right way. But I think the bonus exclusive podcast twice a month have been really special so far. So once again, patreon.com/InsideTheBirds if you want to be a subscriber. Let's get to the transactions, of which there were several and different varieties. On Monday, we found out, that Avonte Maddox would be going on injured reserve. So he's already missed the first of 4 games that he's got to miss. The they will be playing Josiah Scott. They did play Josiah Scott in his place. I imagine that'll continue as
It
of
will.
now,
Yep.
right? They did elevate Mario Goodrich from the practice squad for that game, and they reverted him back afterward. On Tuesday, they released from the practice squad Auden Tate, but then they wound up re-signing him on Thursday.
Correct.
So on Wednesday, the big news was that Dallas Goedert and Marlon Tuipulotu went on IR. And we were talking about this last week. Didn't look good for Goddard when he had that. Not last week, Monday. The way he got hit in the shoulder, And then I think on the Wednesday podcast, Adam, you had reported yourself that it just didn't look good, and you weren't hearing great things. So
no, what we had heard is IR is definitely a possibility.
Possibility, right?
Now, I didn't see this. Someone I think said in our Discord that Goddard told the media that he'd be back for the Chicago game. That's when he and Tuipulotu would be eligible first to play. I hope so.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Right.
For those of us who are in fantasy, we'll get to that in a second. I have a couple thoughts on that. But Tuipulotu, I didn't see the injury. I don't know when he got hurt.
I don't either. That's listed as a knee. Nick Sirianni said that, I think it was Nick Sirianni said that he heard it during the game and just kept playing through it. So, look, I think some of the moves that have been made since, which include the signing of not only Linval Joseph, but Ndamukong Suh, suggest that they probably weren't very happy with Marlon Tuipulotu's play to begin with, even before the injury. And now you wonder, when he gets back, is there space in the rotation for him, or was that signing because they don't expect him back soon? They did not give a timetable or much clarity on the knee injury itself.
Yeah, we'll look into that for Sunday's pregame show. But so that game, by the way, Week 15 would be at Chicago, and boy, the way that Justin Fields is running, holy smokes, he's been unbelievably special with the ball in his hands, running the football, setting not only team records,
right.
He's been incredible, fun to watch him play after a rough start, and then. Tyree Jackson was activated into the 21-day window from reserve PUP. So he technically would be allowed to play on Sunday if they think he's ready. And they would have to activate him Saturday by 4 p.m. Eastern, or he couldn't play this week.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm sorry. No. He was activated off of PUP. So he's actually on the 50. He's on the 53.
Right.
Janoris Robinson, that 21-day practice window was opened up off of IR. But Tyree Jackson is on, because the deadline was Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, so he's on it now. But we just don't know if he's going to play this week. He's just starting to work, so we'll see. We'll see exactly. He's been. We had heard that he'd been running pretty well. He looks good.
Mm-hmm.
Is he ready now to play? We'll see. You and I saw him in training camp. We were kind of surprised at how much bigger he looked physically.
Yeah.
So then I know that timing's coincidental, but it is, it's just, he just happens to, the deadline was this Wednesday, or he couldn't play this season. So they activated him. Now, again, they have till Saturday. So Noah Tungiai they could use his final elevation if they want to bring him up as a third tight end, but they're going to need to add a third tight end one way or the other.
Absolutely. All right. We'll see what they do in that regard. Let's talk about the defensive line. We'll get to some of the other signings real quick, but obviously, as I mentioned, they signed Linval Joseph. They signed Ndamukong Suh. I mean, these are two guys who have played in the league for quite a while. They've been excellent at what they do, but they were also guys who have not played for any team this year, signing off the street. Linval Joseph is a nose tackle. He is what they were missing from Jordan Davis. He lines up over the center. He is a space eater. When he played he was drafted by the Giants, but it's really when he went to the Vikings and played under Mike Zimmer's system that he really came into his own, made 2 Pro Bowls. So he's obviously there to give them what they were missing from Jordan Davis, which, we keep saying, like, Jordan Davis is he's rehabbing. He's missed 2 games of his 4. As we understand it, he's progressing through his rehab, but it's really difficult right now for the team to know specifically whether he's going to be able to be definitely activated when he's ready to be activated in 21-day window. Will he be able to play right away, or will it take him a couple of weeks? So with that uncertainty, Adam, you would think that that's a big reason why Linval Joseph is here, along with the fact that the Eagles needed somebody even in the next 2 weeks to do something better, because they needed an answer there.
Oh, they had us on at least one, and
Mm-hmm.
two gives them real good depth. But let's explain the roles here. First of all, they have 5 D tackles now in the 53. Cox, Hargrave are your starters.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Sue and Milton Williams. Milton Williams, as we know, can play end or tack or inside. So Sue is really a 3 technique. So here's the way I see this. You've got two. They've got 2 fronts. They play their nickel front and their base front.
Mm-hmm.
So in their base, when they think that Joseph is ready, and we'll see, they'll as John Gannon said Thursday, they'll take a look at him in practice this week on Thursday and Friday, and they'll get a better idea if he's physically ready to play on Sunday at the Colts, and if so, how much. Then they'll go from there. Gannon knows the player a little bit. They were together with the Vikings some years ago. Though John was a D-backs coach, of course, he knows the player. They were there together, so at least
Mm-hmm.
he has a general idea. Watch him in practice, kind of what he can do. So that's big because he is a supreme run stopper when he's right physically.
Right.
Now he's an older player. He just turned 34. He did an interview. Great quote. He's so happy to be here because there's nothing like being able to potentially get a Super Bowl ring in the twilight
Mm-hmm.
of your career. Like how cool is that?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know. So he
Isn't that basically what Sue did when he was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Right?
yeah,
Was he on that?
right.
Yeah, he was on the team, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
he got a ring 2 years ago.
Him
Oh
and
hell yeah.
JPP. Right.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then Sue would be a 3 technique in the scheme, maybe to back up Cox and Joseph. See again, if let's say they want to. Before Davis comes back, let's just say it's this Sunday. Let's say, for argument's sake, that Joseph plays. Well, Jonathan Taylor's coming here. You know, he's going to be in this game against the Eagles. He's
Yeah.
off the injury report by the way this week. He looked good, really good. He's not had a great season. He's been hurt a lot with this recurring ankle problem, but he looked great
Right.
against the Raiders. You know what's coming.
Yep.
Everybody knows what's coming.
Everyone
So
knows it's coming.
maybe Joseph can give him 15 to 20 plays in base. I
Okay.
mean, maybe. But again, if he's active, I mean,
Right.
you're looking at a fourth. When I say fourth of snaps, then again, they had the defense was on the field 51 snaps in the first half
Right.
against
Right.
Washington. But normally it's 60 offense, 60 on defense is your usual average. So maybe if you can give him 15 snaps, that would be great in base.
Sure. Sure.
And then Sue, we have no idea he's 36 years old. How the heck did he turn 36?
Oh my God, that is crazy.
Yeah, he
36 years old.
okay, technically he turns 30. No, yeah, in fact he turns 30. Yeah, 20. Yeah, wow, holy smokes, he turns 26 in January. Wow, yeah. So he's a 3 technique. Now he has played nose before in certain fronts, but he's really a 3 technique. He's a different 3 technique. He can rush the passer, yes. He's super physical, explosive, and he's nasty as bleep. He's a nasty
Yes.
guy.
He's always been
So,
a good run stopping 3 technique. Yeah.
yep. So it's a very
And he's
interesting look.
played in multiple fronts. Yep. He's
Yeah,
played in
yeah.
multiple
So I'm
fronts
saying,
before.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you could do a couple things for him. So there are certain things they could do with these guys. As you said, who knows what these guys have left in the tank? They haven't been with neither guy's been with it in a practice since last January. So you don't
Right.
know. Physical shape is one thing. It's not game shape. So you got to
Right.
see what kind of wind they have, and they're going to get a look at them today. Friday's a big one, though it's a shorter practice, and they have the Saturday walkthrough.
Right. So I think the signings of these 2 guys make a lot of sense given the injuries that the Eagles currently have and the issues they currently have in run defense. But I will, until you and I sort of make some more calls and have a little more time to figure out what their former employees thought of them or people who've seen tape, we'll talk to Greg Osell, thought of them. I'll withhold judgment a little bit because I can already tell that they're sort of like, oh, wow, we're great. I mean, we've loaded up on all these guys, but again, these guys were complementary pieces even over the last year or two. And I don't know that they were playing the greatest football of their careers over the last year or two. So
Sure.
they were on the street for the first 10 weeks of the season. I think everybody's got to keep that in mind. I can already see the kind of expectation that against the Colts on Sunday, the Eagles are going to be some great run defense because of these 2 guys. And, let me remind everybody now that even when Jordan Davis was on the field, they were allowing 5.1 yards per carry. So I don't think that there's some miracle cure but that's going to just all of a
There's no
sudden Sunday
panacea.
going to work. No panacea. I mean, listen, these guys. But I'm also, I mean, be patient. These guys maybe in 2 or 3 weeks get in great shape, and all of a sudden you're looking at a really good stacked D line. So that's very possible too. I just wouldn't expect Sunday to be the again the finger snap overnight cure for what's been ailing this run defense. And I'll also say that I think the Eagles have been really good at this, and I hope that it continues. When you add a guy, first they add a guy like Robert Quinn, right, to a group of pass rushers like BG and Sweat and Reddick, who are veteran guys, and it seems to work well. It worked well when they brought in Jay Ajayi. It worked well in the past when they brought some other veterans in. But now you brought in like Ndamukong Suh, as you're saying, is a 3 technique, and that's the position that Cox and Hargrave play. So is he only here to be a backup like Marlon Tuipulotu was and play 20% of the defense? Because he's is he okay with that? Because he's Ndamukong Suh, not Marlon Tuipulotu. So you just wonder how all of this veteran, big personality is going to jibe in the locker room. I hope it works out well. I'm sure they did their homework on it.
A couple things here. I learned this from Ajayi talking to the team when it happened, and then after it happened. Mm-hmm. He had major issues with Adam Gase, the then Dolphins head coach who had a lot of personnel control with Miami. He wanted him off the team. There's a saying, when everything's going well, nobody says anything.
Right.
The word we had heard back, well, I'd heard, we were doing a show the year after, but I know I heard it then very strongly from 2 people, that he was a model citizen. They got, as you just said, they got their reports, they got their information. Gase was honest with them about his issues with him. By the way, Gase had a lot of problems with a lot of players. There were some issues that Gase had with players, and Jai was one of them, so he wanted off the team. And you're just not going to rock the boat when the team's great. Guys know they don't want to be the one that everyone points to. Oh, this guy opened his mouth; he was a problem. And Joseph is a good dude. I know that for a fact. And then Suh, about the over aggressiveness, the bad penalties. Mm-hmm. Plus, they could talk to Jim Schwartz if they wanted to, but he's with Tennessee. But yeah, I mean, well, look, Darius Slay knows him obviously, and Slay was quoted. He talked a lot about him.
Yeah,
reporters talked to him about it. So you're right, though. You got character checks. I'm sure they did that.
Yeah, and man, there are a lot of 30-somethings on this team. Between all those linemen and Darius Slay and James Bradbury. So just interesting. So we'll see if it works out. I mean, again, the concept behind these moves are very, very sound. They make a lot of sense.
One thing I would add, just for argument's sake, if they didn't sign Suh and Joseph, okay, so you'd be down to 3 D tackles, Cox and Hargrave. Okay, did you see how many snaps they had?
Yeah,
in that game.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I mean, it's no one's fault other than they were terrible on the run on early downs. That they kept giving up. Like they were just not getting negative runs, and they gave up too much on first and second down, whereas it's third short and so forth. So clearly, Howie Roseman and his staff said this can't continue because Cox played 70 snaps, Hargraves played 66. In fact, if they didn't make a move because Tuipulotu's out. Mm-hmm. I mean, Marvin Wilson, you don't want to see him on the field. He's just not good enough yet.
Yeah.
They didn't really have much of a choice. I'm looking at the only D tackle they had, Teron Jackson, strictly an outside. He's a pass rusher, DN or outside linebacker. That's it, Marvin Wilson. So they had to.
Yeah, I don't know what the practice squads around the NFL, because there are veterans on practice squads, but I don't know who's out
done
there.
That, right? You're right. Good point. But yeah, but to know your system. By the way, Linval Joseph played in it with the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
So, because Staley's running the Fangio system, and it was great. Greg Roman, the OC of the Ravens, was asked Thursday about why is running up and why is average per carry up. He said it's because of the Fangio system. He talked about split safety, which the Eagles run, and 2 deep safety, which the Eagles run, and that gives you one less player in the box, that safety who would drop down.
Right.
And that's what his opinion. I was like, wow, this is exactly what a lot of people think, and he kind of spelled it out. And that's the Eagles have to make a choice here. If these new guys come in and they're not playing well, they're going to have to start looking at dropping a safety in the box.
Probably have to. And we did mention this. It seems like 3 million years ago now, but we did say going out of training camp into the season that it seemed a little awkward with their 53-man roster that they were going to have a player like Jordan Davis to anchor their 5-man fronts on first and second down, but did not have a backup, a natural backup at that position, and it hurt them. I mean, it only hurt them one. I mean, it hurt them overall, but only really came back to bite them in one game. But that's just for now. We'll see what happens going forward. But it is kind of surprising because Howie is normally all about depth and always having some answer at some position. But that one in particular, he never had an answer for going into the year. And 9 weeks later, now you're signing guys off the street to try to compensate for it. So we will see what happens with this defensive line. I want to get into
well
this.
said.
Yeah,
Well said.
I want to get into the.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Thank you. Get into the safety Marquise Blair that they brought to the practice squad because he's a really fascinating story.
It's such a shame. I remember talking to the Seahawks. I don't know, maybe his first or second year. They thought he was going to be a stud.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple major knee injuries. There was a point where they weren't sure how long he'd be able to play, and he just kept getting hurt. So they gave up on him. It's too bad. So it's kind of one of these situations. He signed to the practice squad. You just take a shot. Let's see how healthy he is. He's a big safety. He's over 6'1". He's got a lot of talent. He was a second round pick, folks, in 2019 with the Seahawks.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Carolina earlier this year. The GM of the Panthers, Scott Fitterer, was with him in Seattle, so he obviously knows the player. But it didn't work out there, so they got a chance to bring him in, and it's too bad, man. This kid had a lot of talent. He's only 25 years old. See how healthy he is, and I'll tell you what, it's hard to develop safeties in this league.
Definitely.
The Eagles have done a great job with Epps, and you can never have enough depth. Remember, C.J. Carter-Johnson's contract's up. Wallace has not kind of worked out. I know he's a third safety, but he hadn't played that well.
Right.
So who knows?
Who knows? No, they like to take a gamble on these guys, right? Guys who were supposed to be high upside players who had injuries, and we'll see. Any other signing? Oh no, but I have to raise my hand and admit that I was guilty of forgetting the fact that Mac McCain was on the practice squad until he got released. So
honestly, I didn't know he was until I got all the transactions. I was like, oh, okay. But it's before we get to the injuries for both teams and the matchups, it's worth taking a shot on these guys because they know the player, they've gone up against them. The staff has, the front office knows these players, the pro staff knows these players because it's their job to know these players. So
right.
This is just me saying this, but I don't think that you're doing this unless you think you have a chance to win the Super Bowl, because when they were bad in 2020, they were light on depth at certain positions. They just I don't want to say they threw their hands up, but I thought they could have brought players in they didn't at certain positions where they had poor depth.
Right.
When you're going for it, you try to plug up every hole. And
no doubt.
The D tackle position was a major problem with depth and rotation. And now we don't know if they've solved it. As you said, these guys got to play first.
Mm-hmm.
See how much they've got left, but it's certainly worth a shot. And these are guys who've won a lot of football in their careers.
Absolutely. All right, let us talk about the injuries facing the current roster. Now, it looks like we know A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith got banged up at different times during the game against Washington. They were both on the injury list. Brown with an ankle, Smith with a knee. I believe I saw A.J. Brown tell reporters he feels fine, so I guess that's a good thing. But the receivers, and we'll get into this more on the pregame show on Sunday, they did not, for the first time this year, do a really good job in their one-on-one matchups against the Commanders. So some of that, you tip your cap. Commanders are good. But yeah, and we talked about it in the film review pod also. They just didn't do a great job. So you wonder if that was just a bad day or if these injuries are a little bit bothering them more than they're letting on.
Well, the A.J. Brown one, to me,
mm-hmm.
was not the same. I was just going to say Brown did not look the same after he got hurt. He seemed to be off a little bit.
I agree. Britton Covey, who looks like he's getting pile drived into the ground every time he's tackled, amazingly is on the injury report for the first time, I think, with a thigh. And Jason Kelsey, we saw him come in and out of the game with an ankle. Fletcher Cox is on with a what's that? Same one, right?
No,
it's always Kelsey. That one.
Kelsey, it's the same injury. Yeah, he talked about it on Thursday, and it's just kind of maintenance. Same ankle, it keeps re-injuring. You saw him taped up. And then Cox, this is new with a foot. Wait, didn't he got hurt 2 weeks ago, remember, against the Texans and left?
Yes.
I don't think they ever listed what the injury was.
I don't either because he came right back into the game, did he not? I mean, it was a very short time that he left the game. I thought.
I thought it was more than a couple snaps, but regardless,
Mhm.
now it's a foot, and then the one that I don't want to say came out of the blue. It definitely was not listed in the game. But what do you know about the Robert Quinn being added after Thursday's practice didn't work with a back injury?
Yeah, it was at after Thursday's practice. Although, I spoke to someone, a personnel source who watched the tape and has been watching Eagles tape, familiar with it, and he told me that he's not surprised that Quinn has a back injury. He felt like the way Quinn was playing, he did not have the explosion and the bend
Hmm.
that you saw from Robert Quinn last year in particular.
Hmm.
So,
Uh-oh.
makes you wonder
Uh-oh.
if the back thing's been bothering him at all, and then if
Yeah.
really like flared up. I don't know what the situation is, but clearly, um, Robert Quinn did not look like an explosive player, and hasn't really yet since they brought him here. And it's been what, 3 games that he's played. Now it's been a tough situation because they had 2 games in 4 days, right? And
Yeah.
he had just got to the team, and then they had 11 days off. He's probably completely out of his routine right now because of the weird scheduling for the Eagles. But you were hoping that he was going to come and give you a little bit more juice in the pass rush, and so far you just not have seen it, and it's not great that he pops up here on the injury report with a back.
Yeah. Now, it, I fit. It did. Yeah. It was like added it, but don't you think it happened in the game or something? It must have been
Well,
after
that's
the
what I'm
game.
saying. The guy who watched tape said, he looked like he was not explosive and bendy and favoring the back that when he was rushing when he was out there on the field. So
Yeah.
he
It's
surmised that
funny.
the back was bothering him during the game.
When I was watching the game, they show the replay. You could see they weren't showing Quinn specifically, but you could see him like he
Hmm.
was almost standing up as he's running. He wasn't getting low. And I
Right.
made a mental note, and you just get that information. I find that interesting. So
Yeah.
that's not good. That's that because this is his last week is his first full week of practice. So you were hoping to see him. He played a decent amount of snaps. You were hoping to see him do a little bit better. But so the other injuries, Reddick with a thigh, he'll play. Josh Jobe, they could use depth at corner now. He's really basically a special teams player. He wouldn't really be playing on defense, but he has this lingering hamstring problem. He didn't practice on Thursday, not looking good for him. And then with the Colts, Deion Jackson, he's the number 2 running back for the Colts
Hmm.
after the trade of Naheem Hines to the Bills. He missed a game due to a knee injury. He did work some on Thursday, so they're optimistic. Jonathan Taylor's off the injury report for the first time in many weeks, and he had a great game. DeForest Buckner with a neck, he worked with Thursday. He'll play. Oh, and then Kwity Paye. It's the
Hmm.
same ankle he injured, which he caused to miss 3 games. He remember on that Thursday night, awful Thursday night game against Denver.
Yes.
It's his right ankle. He got carted off in that game. Well, he re-injured it in the last game, so it's not definite that he'll play. He hasn't worked this week yet.
Right.
See what happens today. And then Shaq Leonard, he's done for the season. And that would explain when we get to the matchups, their numbers against tight ends, not so good.
No, no, not good at all.
And
Now,
then,
if
yeah,
good.
no, Kenny Moore with an illness, he'll play, but Shaq Leonard's out for the season. He had neck surgery.
Right. I keep looking at the Colts and I wonder why their defense isn't great. I mean, they've got some pretty good defensive linemen between Buckner, Pay, and Yannick Ngakwe, but they've all been hurt a lot this year, if I'm not mistaken, right? Even Ngakwe, who's not on the injury report now, was earlier this season, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So if they could ever get these 3 guys on the field at the same time and healthy, and it looks like Ngakwe's healthy now, Buckner, you said, is going to play. If Pay can play in the league where they pay to play, that this is could actually be a pretty formidable defensive front for the
Oh, the great
for the,
front is
for
one of the
Colts.
best in the
Yeah,
NFL. Big Grover Stewart.
right.
Buckner has a left elbow dislocation. He's played with it. He hasn't missed any time. You'll see he wears a contraption.
Hmm.
He's been listed with hip, left elbow, shoulder, thumb, and neck. Neck is the current one, but he'll play with it. Back with Ngakwe, as you said. The only player they've lost for the season, Tyquan Lewis. He serious knee injury. He's been hurt a
Hmm.
lot. He's been their top backup D tackle, DN, and Leonard, as we said, with a neck surgery. And then offensively, Matt Ryan's over his right shoulder sprain. That's his grade 2. That's why he started last week.
Okay.
And then the only players that have missed time on offense, let's see here. Anyone else? Taylor missed 3 games, weeks 5, 6, and 9. Deion Jackson missed last week. Michael Pittman missed week 2 with a quadriceps injury. Alec Pierce, who's their other starting receiver, is rookie out of Cincy,
Hmm.
missed week 2. and their punter Sanchez tore his Achilles. He's out for the season. He got hurt week 1, but
It sucks
other
when your punter tears his Achilles. That's pretty bad.
yeah, actually, it's right before the season started. They put him on IR, so they're fairly healthy. The key here is, as you talked about, Kwity Paye. If he can't play, he's a speed rusher like Ngakoue. Those two together, you're right, absolutely right. Those two together are fast as heck. And Grover Stewart, he got that big contract. He's been good as a 4th-round pick. And DeForest Buckner, what a great trade that was. They gave up a 1st-round pick for him. That was a great trade. But that's it. They don't have a great depth on their D line, but the Paye one's the one to look at.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, he was off to a pretty good start when he was healthy earlier this year. Adam, I thought he had a few sacks in the first 5 or 6 games. I'll check on that, but I thought he was doing fairly well. Yeah, he's got 4 sacks this year. So 4 sacks in how many games has he played? 6 or 7? Either way, he only had 4 last year, so he's already matched last year's total. Good kid out of Michigan.
3 games. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Eagles liked him.
Oh, he would have been a great fit last year, coming off the edge. In fact, heck, if they would have drafted him, you probably would not. They would not have made the big signing of Son Reddick. Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. It's so, folks. If he plays, watch his right ankle, which caused him to miss 3 games. But that's it for injuries as we get to the matchups.
All right, we will get to the matchups. First, we're going to tell you to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto, so make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com. And on Twitter, it's at phlsportsnation. Let's pause real quick for a word from our great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. And if you go to Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam just sent you. You will get a great deal. And if you can't get in, there's always SkyMotorCars.com. All right. Let's talk about the Eagles offense against the Colts defense. Now, the first thing that stands out is the Colts, their defensive coordinator is Gus Bradley. So you know what you're getting. Cover three, and more cover 3. So I would imagine Rodney McLeod, old friend, is the box safety, right?
Yep.
And is it Julian Blackman who's their deep safety, post safety?
Yeah. He's had some injury issues in his career, but yeah, he's there.
They all have.
Yeah, Kenny
Gilmore corner. They all have.
Gilly Lock. What a great play he made last week to win the game.
Good player.
Yeah, and then they'll go with Kenny Morse. Their slot corner's terrific.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Faison is there because of Gus. He was with them with the Raiders when Gus was running the defense for the Raiders. And Gilly Lock's still a good player in his 30s. Yeah, he's dominant. They'll play a lot of 4-2. They'll play a lot of. They'll do some 4-2-5, of course, as all teams do, just about.
Mm-hmm.
Okereke, we all thought it was Okereke, but it's Okereke, as he says. And Zaire Franklin's from the Philly area, might remember him. Who went to Syracuse. So their 2 nickels are Okereke and Franklin. And it's a predictable defense. Cover 2 beaters or tight ends, and that is why it's funny. They're unreal. They give up very little production to receivers.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, what it is their safeties aren't very athletic, and no Shaq Leonard. They're 10th worst in production in terms of yardage and touchdowns. Last year, they're 4th worst.
Mm-hmm.
So you could get now. I know that without Goedert there. So here's the way I see it. Calcaterra will be their move tight end. The only issue with him is he's not really strong physically. We're told he's got some of the best hands on the team, so he'll play more snaps. Stahl, I'll say this once: Stahl could run the tight end screens, not as good as Goedert, but he can do it.
Sure.
And then we'll see about Tyree Jackson if he's ready or not. But look, it's devastating. There's no question. It's a major drop off. They're going to learn a lot about Jack Stoll here. Not the way they wanted to learn about him, but they're going to see if he can handle more work as a pass catcher. And they are by the way, the Colt DBs, they're number 1 in the NFL in terms of giving up the least amount of production. They give up very little. If you're going to get them, you're going to move your tight ends around. It's going to be hard. And they don't play very high scoring games. They only have had really 1 high scoring game against Jacksonville. It's going to be tough.
I would watch that matchup on the left side of the line with Jordan Mailata and Yannick Ngakoue. Mailata, the one area in pass protection where sometimes he still struggles, and Trey Thomas talked about that, is you try to catch those speed rushers, but Ngakoue is so fast off the edge and very bendy as well. And Mailata is such a big, enormous human being that there are times that he'll struggle against the bendy guys because he's so enormous. So I mean, not and Mailata's been really good. I'm just saying this is a sort of a good left tackle versus a good speed rusher to watch, and all it takes is one or two good reps by Ngakoue to hit the quarterback or force him off his mark, and who knows what happens there. So that's the only spot on the. And look, the Colts D line is really good, but the Eagles offensive line is really good too.
Mm-hmm. Great
So
matchup. Yep, I agree
this
with
will
you.
be a nice little war in the trenches. Yeah.
So
Also, good.
I'm wondering what's your thoughts on, okay, so without Goedert, we just outlined the tight ends. How do you think the pass target tree is going to go now that Goedert was either one or two every week? So
Yeah.
it'll go Brown and Smith. Who's number 3?
Well, that's a good point. Zach Pascal and I think you're probably going to see a little bit of a mix of Pascal and Quez Watkins. I don't think it's going to be one particular person. And as we mentioned in the last pod, maybe you start to see a little bit more throwing to the running backs out of the backfield. I will say against a team that plays a lot of cover 3, the deep overs are there a lot. You move the safety with your eyes. The seams are there. We always talk about how you can hit the tight ends. So there should be some opportunities for Stoll to get a couple of catches and move the chains. But interesting on Jalen Hurts, and we're going to talk to Greg Cosell about this a little bit, and Jason, I think, brought it up too, Avant, is that, the cover 3 design is really, you always run a deep out on a cover 3 to help clear that deep safety and then run a deep over, which should be open if you have time to throw. And the Steelers play a lot of cover 3. They alternate cover 2, cover 3. And then last week, Washington played a decent amount of cover 3 also. And you can tell that Jalen doesn't mind trying to beat that over the top because he threw to A.J. Brown against the Steelers out of a cover 3 look, and he got that touchdown, which really almost was intercepted. And then he did the exact same thing against Washington, throwing the ball deep to A.J. Brown when the real route that's supposedly open right there is the over, the Devontae Smith route. So there should be some opportunities here for Devontae Smith to make some hay, I would say, in that 20 to 30 yard territory, as long as the protection's there for Jalen Hurts. But he doesn't mind trying to air it out to A.J. Brown against that defensive look.
Well, one thing I'll tell you, Adams was really one of the few receivers to really get them, and he's super physical. He's not the tallest guy in the world. He's just over 6 feet. Devontae Adams did, but he got them. He 9 for 126 and a touchdown on 14 targets last week. So that's A.J. Brown territory to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then Foster Moreau, who's filling in for Waller, did score last week again. Tight ends do well against this Colts defense, so they should have some opportunities. And they're not great covering the running backs out of the backfield. So, Sirianni, he was asked by the media this week who's going to take over the production, and finally he actually mentioned, and we have running backs who catch the football. Mm-hmm. Hello, could you get them the ball?
Yeah. All right. So this is a good test. It's a good defense and obviously a good Eagles offense. So it should be a pretty nice test. And I think the big question that'll be sort of either answered or that will linger during the game is, how does the Eagles offense look conceptually without Dallas Goedert? Mm-hmm. Because he's such an instrumental part of not just catching passes, but their RPO game, because he can sit there and be a blocker. He can look like he's a blocker and be a receiver. He can block in the screen game. He can catch in the screen game. I mean, I don't know if people truly understand how much of the offense is built around Dallas Goedert, even if the ball isn't going to him. So they just don't have another guy like him. And so there's going to have to be some changes conceptually with the offense, not wholesale, but some, and we'll get an idea of what they do without him.
Yeah, no question. Calcaterra as a move guy for sure. Devontae Smith certainly will do more. Now, here's another question for you: Do they run more, less? That's another thing. You said conceptually. Well, will they change their philosophy a little bit? Can't answer that because they haven't played without Goedert, but it'll be interesting to see what they do.
I'm fascinated to see how they use Calcaterra because he's not an inline tight end. So you can't use him in 11 personnel unless everybody's spread out, right? So, and if you do that, you're already kind of telegraphing a pass. So I don't see how you can use Calcaterra on first or second down
Um,
unless you come out in 12 with Stoll in line and you
I got an idea.
run a few times out of that formation, but then pass after that. You know?
What you can do is, I get what you're saying, but sometimes they'll do this when they think it's a tell. You're going to go four wide, one tight end, and that tight end's a slot tight end where everyone thinks you're going to throw and you want it because you're in a single back. You're going to run it. You know,
There you go. That yes, right.
like
I
you can
agree
do
with
that
you.
too, right? But you're
That's what I
right,
meant by you run out of that formation and then
right,
later you pass out of it. Right.
right.
Correct.
As you say, the sequencing.
Mm-hmm.
As you've talked about throughout, I love that term. You've talked about that the last couple of years on the show.
Yeah.
That's what you do because you start seeing what they're trying to do to you. They
Mm-hmm.
run a 43 cover three. Yes, they're tight end beaters because there's spacing. Some coaches I've talked to over the years said, like in Seattle's cover three, it was the far left on overs. There was always space. There's on the handoff for some reason there was space. Like that's what you would find when you do analytics on it,
Right.
just depending on the team. But I thought it's going to be interesting, as you said. It's fascinating because they unfortunately have to deal with this. But you know what? Some other guys are going to get an opportunity, and you know what? Let's say, for argument's sake, to move this along here, let's say all of a sudden they get the backs involved, which they've not been involved hardly at all this season.
Mm-hmm.
And when Goddard comes back, they'll say, "Hey, you know what? Sanders, who was terrific 2 years ago or three, whatever, it was rookie season 19. They
Mm-hmm.
don't really throw too much anymore. He had a good camp. He's not dropping the football. He's not fumbling either. He can catch."
He could. All right. Let us talk about the Indianapolis Colts offense versus the Eagles defense. Now, I'm going to lean more on you for this because I've only seen 2 Colts games this year, and last time I saw Matt Ryan, I thought, I know the Colts were struggling in general around him, but I did not. He sort of had that Roethlisberger look where the ball looks like it weighs 10 pounds. Uh, he just doesn't look like he can throw the ball past
Can't.
15, 20 yards like he used to.
No, it's no deep passing. It's crossers. You saw Paris Campbell. We're going to talk about him in a second, who's finally healthy, who really should have been an Eagle. That's really what they were going to do instead of Arcega-Whiteside. That's what they should have done. They didn't. Oh, well. But
They would have
yeah,
been disappointed by him not playing for the first 2 years either, though. So.
I know he's been hurt, but I was doing the fantasypoints.com live stream on Thursday night with John Hansen and Cosell, and I jokingly said, "Isn't it amazing? All of a sudden he's healthy." I know he was hurt. There were real injuries, but it's funny how
Yeah.
sometimes guys get healthy all of a sudden, like with Kadarius Toney, who won it out of the Giants, and oh boy, he's doing great. He's healthy. Now,
Yeah, amazing.
miraculous. But good for Paris Campbell to be healthy. So, yeah. Now I'll tell you, we've talked about this. We actually previewed this a couple shows ago, but I could update this now. So they thought Bernard Raymond, who's now starting at left tackle, who's, by the way, an older rookie, he's 25 years old.
Right.
Teams we spoke with before the draft thought he was a major project. I had one team give him a 5, fifth round grade. They thought he was just not strong enough. Didn't think he was advanced enough in terms of hand usage. Now, he did well in this past game against the Raiders. And by the way, he had some tough matchups against a good front, or particularly at D tackle, really. Excuse me, DN. But now he's coming against a different defense, and we'll see what the Eagles do to exploit that matchup.
I mean, he should get eaten up by either Sweat or Reddick.
Yeah,
honestly,
exactly.
he should really.
Oh,
but they're not going to pass the ball a whole lot anyway, so it's
probably
they're going to try to run and short pass.
Sure, and now, and Sweaty's not on the injury report, which is surprising.
I know, yeah, that is surprising.
With a leg or ankle, so that's good. So you're going to get obviously a lot of Jonathan Taylor. So what we were told is the Eagles got gashed on double teams. That's where runs on first down that should have been negative or 0 yards or 1 yards became 4 and 5 yards on first down. Remember, they gave up 17 runs of 4 yards or more in this past game. Mm-hmm. So the Colts see this. Jonathan Taylor's way more talented than Gibson and Robinson. No offense to those guys, but this guy's special. He's just been hurt a lot this season. After what he did last week, he showed his ankle is good. You're going to see that. I know that Quentin Nelson has not played well this season. He's better lately, but he's been disappointing coming off that major contract, biggest contract in NFL history for a guard. Will Fries, is it Freeze or I think it's Fries?
I thought it's Freeze, but okay.
Or maybe it is, but remember they have the kid French. They had the kid French. They called
that's
French
right.
Fries.
Let's just call him Will F.
Yeah, right. Who's the right guard, who's a second-year player. But no, what I was saying earlier is that things were so bad. Two former Eagles started left tackle. It was Matt Pryor to start the season. That, of course, that didn't go well. And now he's their top backup lineman. And then they tried Agent Dennis Kelly, who's had all sorts of physical elements. I remember talking to the Titans. They thought he was toast. They thought he just didn't have much left, and went to Green Bay. And now he's with the Colts. He did start a little bit, but they were actually rotating Raymond, by the way, for a while at left tackle. Now he's starting full time.
Right. Dennis Kelly. Wow. He's definitely surpassed the level of years that I thought he would wind up playing in the NFL. So I got to give him a lot of credit for that. And he also has a touchdown catch. So
more than DGB.
Yeah. So here, I mean, the blueprint is written. The Colts do it anyway, just like Washington did it also. The Colts are trying to run, and Jonathan Taylor is now healthy. He looked great last game. So they're going to ride him. And I know people are thinking, well, all right, you got Linval Joseph now. But remember, Jordan Davis can only play about 20 some odd snaps a game. Linval Joseph, if he's going to play, is probably only going to be able to give you certain snaps. And when he comes out, then once again, you don't have a true nose. So for most of this game, you're not going to have a true nose, and you're going to be asking Fletcher Cox again and Javon Hargrave again, and maybe even if you have Ndamukong Suh available, but Milton Williams. I mean, you're basically throwing out the same cast of guys, and you have a few extra snaps of someone like Linval Joseph, who you're hoping can get the job done. But I'm going to go ahead and say the Colts have run well against better run defenses than the Eagles have. So this is going to be their challenge. Because the Colts are going to try to milk this for as much as they can. You have to think they're going to try to ride the run for as much as they can.
Well, look, Taylor's not had a good year. He's been hurt since week 2 on and off with this ankle injury.
Right, but he's not on the injury report now, right?
No, he's off. But he looked so good last
healthy.
week. Yeah. And what happened, where Frank Reich went wrong, is he kept, for whatever reason, he wasn't calling great games. And the thing that was just a disaster is asking Matt Ryan to drop back so much. It just was too much. He couldn't handle it. You were talking about his lack of arm strength. It's very apparent. And last week, and I'm sure Jeff Saturday, the interim head coach, had something to do with it with his young offensive coordinator, who was their quality control coach, who called a very good game. They came out running. They didn't ask Ryan to win the game for him. And technically, he did, because in the end they won it late. But he threw it less than 30 times, which is really the blueprint when Jonathan Taylor's doing well. Mm-hmm. No, you set up very well. That's the only other things you need to know, folks, is that the tight ends are mostly blockers. They have a lot of them. A guy that the Eagles really loved was Mo Alley Cox, who was signed as from Virginia Commonwealth, who's a basketball player who was made into a tight end from VCU, and he's made himself a nice living as a blocking tight end. When he scores, he's literally just standing out there. No one covers him. I always laugh when he scores, like there's no one around him. Kylan Granson is a second-year tight end who's a F tight end. He's a move tight end. Mm-hmm. You'll see. He's athletic. He's had some good games. And Jelani Woods is absolutely huge. He's on the injury report. He doesn't really do much, but he's a big dude. He's 6'7". But again,
he's like an extra offensive lineman.
They don't throw to these guys very much. Granted, a little bit lately. He's athletic, but you know where it's going to go. You know it's going to go to Campbell now. He's a major factor in the slot, running after the catch. Pierce is their deep guy, though. Again, they're not throwing the ball deep anymore. And Pittman in the intermediate area to run after the catch. And that's pretty much, I'm just trying to
this is honestly not a bad set of wide receivers. I mean, Pittman's a really good X receiver. I mean, he's a perfect boundary X. Campbell has done nicely in the slot this year. I think actually they move him in the slot and outside. Pierce has had a couple of good games. He's caught the ball well. I look at this team, Adam, and it's like they sort of remind me as a little bit like Washington in that they've got good defensive players. They've got good skill position players. They just need some better offensive line play, and they need a better quarterback, a younger franchise quarterback. And if they had one, they'd probably be a lot better of a team.
Yeah, I would agree. And Jeff Saturday will settle things down here. He'll get things calm because he's an offensive lineman by trade.
Yeah.
He knows what needs to get done. He was very, as a consultant for the team, he's very familiar with the personnel. He just didn't know a lot of them personally, knew some of the coaches, not all of them. But
Right.
look, they played a very bad football team. They won. Okay, let's see what happens when arguably the NFL's best team comes into town in Lucas Oil Stadium on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And you're gonna learn a lot about this Eagles team because this is their first loss. Let's see how they rebound off of a loss. I expect very well, and particularly as we've said, anytime they haven't played well, we've mentioned. Let's see how they bounce back. Cox and Hargrave. Let's see how they do, folks.
All right, let us get into the very important part of this podcast, which is the prediction for the game.
I got it wrong last week. First time.
Well, I think we all did. I was tempted though. I had the closest. I was the one who thought it was going to be close because I had 21-12.
Dude, you got the 4 field goals right. What a call!
I did get the 4 field
And the best call
the
ever
Eagles.
on this show.
And the 3 touchdowns. I mean, I got that right too by the Eagles. So the last I checked, using the Rivers Casino app, was the Eagles were down to 6.5-point favorites. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And the total was, I lost the total. I had it somewhere, but now I don't know where it is. I think it was 44. So that's interesting. So, I mean, they went from being double-digit favorites 3 straight weeks. They lose kind of a fluky game because they turned it over. And now they're only 6.5-point favorites. Although I would still say for a road game, 6.5 is still a pretty impressive, spread to have. So let me give me 1 second. Oh yeah, 45 is the total, not 44.
Yeah, I like under that. I have it. Eagles 23, the Colts 16. I wanted to use one of your odd scores.
You jerk! You actually took my score. I think that
I did.
I was in that neighborhood. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I don't see the Eagles scoring 30. I don't. Some field goals, a couple touchdowns. Remember they faced Matt Ryan week 1 last year, and boy, did they get after him when he was with Atlanta.
Right. So that I kind of see it like you do. I think we would both agree that the Eagles have a superior 53-man roster. They are a better team than the Colts. However, they don't have one of their best players. A couple of their best players. They don't have Dallas Goedert, so that changes a little bit what they do offensively. Don't have Avonte Maddox again. Don't have Marlon Tuipulotu. Still don't have Davis. So they're not the best that they can be. And the Colts appear to have Jonathan Taylor healthy based on last week.
Yep.
And that's a big feather in their cap.
Huge.
Because that's a good matchup for them against the Eagles defense. So I have some concerns, but I'm going to pick the Eagles to win a close game. I also agree with you. I don't think they're going to be an offensive juggernaut because of the Goedert injury. So I'm going to give them 24 points, and I'm going to give the Colts 20 points, 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals.
JT, right?
24 to 20. Yeah.
John Taylor will have a score. Right. John Taylor will have a score. Paris Campbell on Josiah Scott. Scott did okay, we're told, but I can see Scott scoring. He scored last week. This is the best he's played in his career.
Mm-hmm.
Then the question is, how will the Eagles score? I'm predicting one of the tight ends to score. I may lower the score for the Eagles. I'm thinking of making like 20 to 16. Yeah, I don't see them getting more than 2 offensive touchdowns. Now, I think they might get a defensive touchdown. Why? Because Ryan cannot move.
Right.
He does not move very well. The Eagles have good pass rushers on the outside. Hassan Reddick could certainly afford to pick up his play a little bit. I think I can see him winning. Bernard Raymond is going to be the guy who's kind of a target on his back. Gannon's got to figure out a way to beat this guy because he's shouldn't even be playing right now. I know he did okay last week, but I know the way a lot of people in the league thought about him. This is a matchup you got to win. You got to win this matchup.
One more observation I want to make. I think people are expecting, because of how good Jonathan Taylor is and how bad the Eagles have been against the run at times, like this could be like a really ugly run defense type game. But the one thing I think about this Eagles team and what gets them to 8-0 and then 8-1 is that they are a very, very resilient team. Mm-hmm. And I think they're a prideful bunch. They have a lot of veterans, and they got raked over the coals all week. Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave. We've seen Fletch like in the week 1 against the Lions not play well, get killed in the media, then come back and have nice games against the Vikings and Washington week 2, week 3. Now he's inconsistent, and that's an issue, but I think this team is going to come out in this game determined to be better against the run this week than they were last week. So while I think still Taylor's going to get 100 yards, I think some people are thinking he's going to just run like 150,
Yeah.
170 against. I don't think that's going to happen.
I would disagree in one fact. I don't think the media makes any difference to Cox. It's what the tape tells him. The tape is terrible.
No, but we remember how we said in week 2, week 3 that he got killed by the media and the fans, and he came out and played a lot better. I know it's the tape, but
yeah,
he does. He's aware of what's said about him. He knows about. I've
tape was
interviewed the
so
guy. I know
bad
he's
week
aware.
one.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Well, I think that's a big part of it too. I think he understands that they all did not play great, and they're a prideful. But my point is that they're a prideful bunch. I think that they're
I
going to
agree.
come out a little bit
In fact,
humbled by that.
What you and I said is that you're going to learn a lot about these two guys after week one because the tape is so bad.
Right.
I predicted they're veterans. This is going to be embarrassing for them. They're going to come out playing better. I didn't even think about the media stuff.
Okay, that's fair.
Although the media does get access to all 22.
Yes,
on NFL.com if you want.
And he was clearly asked about it this week. I mean,
I didn't even notice. Okay, I didn't notice. But to me, the tape is the true serum. And what I remember, folks, if you didn't see it, the post-game show, the pregame with Avant and Trey. I love when Trey told us because I said, "Hey, Trey, what would happen with Juan Castillo when the tape wasn't good?" He I don't want to give it away, but dude, you could see the replay on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I love his response because Belichick's known for Tom Brady could throw 48 great passes, but for the two bad ones, he'll make sure he embarrasses Brady. We don't do it. What is this? He'll crush him over it.
Yeah.
Coaches love doing that.
What's his favorite line? The quarterback at Foxborough High could make that throw. Wasn't that his famous
something like
line?
that? Right. But that's my point. I don't know Tracy Rocker at all. I know we know his son's a great baseball player, but obviously Jonathan Gannon, he doesn't seem like a guy who would be tough on players. But fact of the matter is, the tape for these guys is the true serum. It tells you exactly what you did wrong, your effort, and one thing. We're definitely going to talk more about what I'm about to say on Sunday. But we got some stuff like this week that suggested the way they're aligned could be better. They're not playing the run the right way. Like they could take their steps are too broad. They're going forward too much. They need to take shorter steps. When you play the run in this technique, we're told by a former coach, who's I think is this guy retired now? I talked to a guy and talked about a year. And he told me this week because he worked under Fangio years ago. He said that the footwork's got to be better. You don't take those kind of broad steps when you're playing the run.
Right.
Like, that's interesting. I never heard that before. So
yeah.
All right. Well, we'll look for that.
We will definitely get into that on Sunday on the pregame show. It's going to be a great one. Make sure you catch us from 12 to 2 at Rivers Casino and on our YouTube channel. And 12 to 2. No, 10 to 12. Yes. I'm sorry. You got to stop me when I say something wrong like that. 10. I think I was.
By the way, I think or something like that.
Yeah. 10 a.m. to noon at Rivers Casino. That's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds.